deemed to be University Varda. I also wish you all a very happy Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Jayanti. And it's my pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Priyanka Prabhu ma'am, and other guests from our college, university, and various colleges and university faculty and students. So before we proceed for the guest lecture, let me invite Dr. Shyam Panka, Coordinator IQAC Cell at the Tamil College of Pharmacy, to give brief introduction about our college and activities. Shyam sir.
Thank you, Prasanna madam. Madam, could you please stop sharing your screen so that I'll start my screen sharing?
I've stopped sharing, sir.
Yeah, thank you much.
Okay.
Very good morning to you all. I deem it as my privilege to present a brief overview about our university and our college. So Datta Mege Institute of Medical Sciences, a deemed university, is a 125 acres campus, which was located at Savangi Mege Varda. It was established by our Honorable Chancellor, renowned politician, Sri Dattaji Mege, in the year 1989. And it is around 80 kilometers away from Nagpur, which is well connected with rail and flight and all other routes. So the basic philosophy of our university is to create a valuable human resource for the nation with a deep sense of humanity, social responsibility, and social accountability. So the journey of Datta Mege Institute of Medical Sciences as a university started in the year 2005. So we are very proud to say that our university has completed 3 cycles of NAC inspection and was awarded with the A+ grade. And we are also happy to share that our university is gearing up for the next cycle of NAC inspection in the year 2022. So apart from this, we also have been conferred with grade 1 category by Ministry of Human Resource. And we are also very happy to share that we are placed in a best rank with the NRF rankings. Our university stood at 61st place, and our oldest college, that is Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, it stood at 29th place. Sharad Pawar Dental College, so this has stood at 14th place. So these are some of the best ranks which our institute got during the NIRF rankings 2021. So this slide presents a brief overview of our university, which was actually started its innings as a medical college in the year 1989. So later it has been upgraded to university status in the year 2005. Madam, I'm very happy to share that we are offering around 262 courses, 56 PhD programs. So we have around 5 hospitals on the campus, and around 5,700 number of students are studying in our university, both in Nagpur and Savangi Mege Varda campus. And we are also very proud to say that more than 10,000 publications have been made by our university. So this is a brief slide, and I don't want to go into the details because you are supposed to speak, and we are very eagerly waiting to listen from you. And this is what about coming to our college. So this is the Datta Mege College of Pharmacy. It's a young college. It was established in the year 2019. We are offering 2 programs, D-Pharm and B-Pharm, with an intake capacity of 100 students. And we are also very happy to share that in the future we are going to start M-Pharm and PharmD. We have issued a notification for PhD program. So our institution is approved by all the national educational agencies like AICTE, PCI, and it is permanently affiliated to Datta Mege Institute of Medical Sciences, deemed to be university. So for any college, staff is a very big asset, and we are also very fortunate to have experienced, noble, and capable principal. And I'm very happy to share that So I'm not only, so we got a best opportunity to not only work with our principal sir, but we also got a good opportunity to learn from him. All the faculty members, or majority of the faculty members, are with PhD degrees. Apart from this, we also have a good infrastructure like ambient classrooms, smart boards, well-equipped laboratories, and a central preclinical facility for animal studies. So pilot plant is also under process. So this is what about our college, madam. And with the guidance and support of our principal, sir, so we have organized these type of co-curricular and academic activities. So very recently, our principal, sir, has published a book chapter in a Elsevier journal publications. So two of our faculty members have also published their book and book chapters. So these are some of the activities, cultural activities conducted by our college. So some of the our NSS wing in our college is very active. So it is also doing a lot of activities. And this is about press and media coverage. So with this brief presentation, I thank our Prasanna madam for giving me this opportunity to present a brief presentation about our college. Over to you, Prasanna madam.
Thank you, sir. Now I will briefly introduce the speaker to the gathering. So we are happy to have you, Priyanka ma'am. And Dr. Priyanka Prabhu is currently working as an associate professor, Department of Pharmaceutics at D.Y. Patil, deemed to be University School of Pharmacy, Navi Mumbai, since December 2021. And earlier to this, she worked as assistant professor at SVKM and MIMS Mumbai. And she has completed her Bachelor of Pharmacy from Bombay College of Pharmacy, Navi Mumbai, and MPharm in Drug Delivery Technology from Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. She completed her doctorate in pharmaceutics from Institute of Chemical Technology, and her research project entailed development and evaluation of lipid-based nanocarriers for malaria therapy. Priyanka ma'am has 24 publications in her name, including 5 research papers, 8 review articles, and 11 book chapters with a cumulative impact factor of 69.13. She has 402 citations till date and H-index of 11. She is also an inventor of 2 Indian patents which has been granted to her. And she has received various awards, including Ambuja Cement Best PhD Award Thesis, ICT Global Jubilee Innovative PhD Thesis Award, Development of Novel Anti-Malarial Nanocarriers Best Poster Award at 2nd International Conference on Nanotechnology Best Formulations. And there are many accolades in her name. These are a few of her many awards she has been honored with. And another thing I must mention that she is also the recipient of fellowship from University Grants Commission for her master's and doctoral program, and Ratan Tata Trust scholarship for securing a distinction in B.Pharm. And yeah. She has also received the International Travel Grant from Indian Medical Research, Delhi. And she has served as the assistant editor of Control Release Society newsletter, a publication of CRS Indian chapter. She is a reviewer for many journals like Indian Journal of Pharmaceutical Sciences and International Journal of Pharmaceutics and Journal of Drug Delivery. Yeah, there are many journals to be mentioned. And her research interests include development of lipid-based nanocarriers for treatment of various diseases. So this was all about introduction of our speaker today. So we are very eager to hear and learn from you, ma'am. So now I request Dr. Priyanka ma'am to start today's session.
Hey, a very good morning to all. So first of all, I would just like to thank the organizers, Dr. Anil Pete sir and Prasanna ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to share my views, to share my ideas on this platform through this guest lecture activity. So I am very glad to know about your institute as well, whatever was presented. Congratulations on all the publications and all which you showed, all the activities and all you're carrying out. Despite being a new institute, It's really impressive whatever information was shared about the institute. I really wish the institute all the best in its journey ahead. I hope that the institute grows much more in years to come as you expand your programs. Like you mentioned, you're planning to start PharmD and all. So all the best for all your future endeavors for Datta Meghe Institute. I'll just share my presentation. Now, before I start with this presentation, I would just like to kind of give some clarifications regarding this presentation. So whatever I'm presenting today is just based on what I have learned over the past few years when I have published, when I have written a publication and all. When we write a manuscript, there is a lot of learning that is involved. We are learning so many things. And as we go through the process, every time there is something new to learn. Like today, if I have so many publications, I cannot say that I know everything. We are still learning from each other. We are still learning as we are writing our own publications and all. So whatever I'm presenting today, I hope to enrich you with some kind of key takeaways. At the end of the session, each one of you will be having something to take away from this presentation. And it will be really useful to you when you are writing your papers. All of us being in the academic fraternity, we are going to be writing, say, book chapters or your research paper or review articles. So this would really be useful to all of you. So with this brief introduction, I'll just start my presentation. So I always begin my lecture with this cartoon. So this cartoon actually shows you the journey of a manuscript till it becomes a publication. So every publication is first a draft. It's first a manuscript in the hands of the author. So you can see here in this cartoon, this particular author is ready with his manuscript and he is on his way to get finishing line, to getting his paper accepted. But on the way, you can see the hurdles, the obstacles he has to face or he has to overcome to get to the finishing line. And this is true for every paper. There is like a misconception, that, when you are at a young age, you're not yet established yourself and all, then only you will face obstacles. And as you grow older and all, the path will be easier for you. So it is not going to be easy. What I want to tell you is that even when I was doing my doctoral program at Institute of Chemical Technology, we were doing our doctorate under great people. We were doing our doctorate under professors, and still when we were uploading our manuscripts and all, we have gone through this. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we cannot, have that kind of a misconception that, how will I publish? I'm so young, I'm not known in the fraternity. So what this slide tells you is that everybody has to go through this. Every manuscript has to go through this. So we cannot be giving excuses that we cannot publish. Publications are only, for the well-known faculty and all in the field. They get their papers easily published and we have to struggle. We always face rejection. So I've seen that kind of mentality in few young people, young faculty and all. They are feeling that it's very difficult for us to publish. So why I am putting this cartoon is to clarify that this particular journey which is there, it is the same for all. It is the same for all papers. What we can do as scientists, what we can do as academicians is we have to find ways how to overcome these obstacles. Every manuscript is going to face these obstacles. What best can we do so that we will facilitate this transition, this journey, overcome all these obstacles and finally have a paper accepted in our name. So in my presentation, I will tell you how to overcome these obstacles, to take care and increase your chances of getting your paper, your research paper published in a good journal. Now, why do we publish data? This is very important because nowadays there is a lot of focus on research. If you've seen the NEP 2020, which has recently been released, National Education Policy 2020 also places a lot of emphasis on your research in educational institutes. And especially we being in the domain of higher education and education in healthcare, there is a lot of responsibility on us. There is a lot of scope for us to do research, which can really benefit society, which can really benefit the human population at large. So there is a lot of encouragement. If you look at NEP 2020, there is an establishment of NRF, National Research Fund, which would be providing like a seeding or a motivation, coordinating any kind of ideas, which are their research ideas, which are there at institutes, so that they can be given adequate support in terms of financial support, in terms of industry mentorship and all. So the ideas, these research ideas can be sort of incubated, they can be translated into something which can benefit society. So much is being done. There is so much emphasis on research. We have a responsibility, being in the field, we have to contribute to research. We have to write research proposals, ideas, do the work, publish the data in a good journal, make sure that we are contributing, we are disseminating this knowledge to the scientific community. There is some disturbance. I think somebody's mic is. It's okay. So why do we need to publish is to disseminate our knowledge to the scientific community. Whenever we are doing any study, we are sharing our research findings, we are actually enriching the knowledge database in our fraternity. In our pharmaceutical arena, we are actually adding something of value, something of importance to the scientific community. And it obviously helps in growth of the field. It helps in advancement of the discipline, the knowledge which you are creating through your research findings. And in today's world, it is a very important measure of academic success. All your CAS, your career advancement schemes, your academic promotions are all going to be linked to your research output, to the publications which you are having. So how will all this come is when you are going to write a good research paper, you will be able to get a good publication. Once you have good research publications, you will be able to attract government funding. You will be able to attract research funding. So it is all interconnected. It is all interrelated. You do research, you publish, then you get more popular, you get more funding, you get more confidence, you are able to execute more research. So it's going to be all interlinked. And finally, it is going to be a very important measure of your academic success. The number of publications which an academician has, good publications, research publications in peer-reviewed journals, that holds the person in high esteem. It gives an idea about the person's impact on the field. The research the person is doing is really impacting, making a meaningful difference in the community. So it is a measure of academic success. And finally, you have to be quick, otherwise you will perish. You have to publish or perish. If you don't publish it, there are so many people, there is a lot of competition going on in the world. Somebody else will do that research and they will publish it. So you will be left out. So you have to be really very, very quick, constantly on the go. Keep yourself updated with what is happening in the field. Do your homework, do your research accordingly, and publish the data as soon as possible. Once your experimentation is done, you should not be wasting time in executing it into a publication. Now I'll take you through the different parts of a research paper. Since this session is dedicated to writing a research paper, we first need to understand what are the different elements or the different components present in a research paper, the different parts of a research paper. And as you build the research paper, part by part, these different parts are written. Every part has its own function in the paper. It has its own role. So we have to do justice to that role. We cannot ignore any part of the paper, be it the title, be it the conclusion or the abstract. Everything has an important role. So I will be taking you through this different parts of a paper. How do you emphasize in each part what needs to be done and what you should be avoiding? So a research paper, as we all know, is the most common type of a journal manuscript. Apart from a research paper, you do have review articles, but in a journal, unless you pick an exclusive journal, which is only for review articles, you will always see in any journal, research articles will be more and review article will be one or two in an issue. So research paper is a very important type of a journal manuscript wherein scientists are documenting their research findings, whatever they have done at their end, the experiments, what they have found, what they have concluded, they are putting it in the form of a manuscript and submitting it to a journal. So this is also called as an original article or a research article or just an article. Depending on the journal, they use different terminologies, but all these are ultimately the same, a research paper or a research article. So this research format, original research article format, it is suitable for many fields. You have, even the medical field is publishing papers on clinical trials and all. We are publishing papers, even basic science people, basic science institutes also publish original research papers. So this format is common for many different fields and different kinds of studies, be it your preclinical studies or be it your clinical studies, immunological related studies. So if your different types of studies are documented in the form of an original research paper. You will have an introduction at the beginning, then you will have your methods, you will have your results, and finally your discussion and conclusion. Now let us come to the million-dollar question. How do I select a journal? When I'm talking about publishing a research paper, you have to publish it in a journal. So how do I choose the journal? There are so many journals. Which one is best for me? So that can be a confusion in the minds of a scientist when you want to publish your paper. So I have enlisted some points here, some factors here, which one needs to consider in the choice of a journal. Now you cannot accomplish all these factors in one. You cannot have like a journal which is having all these factors included. So you cannot have all the attributes possible, but what you will be trying is to have at least most of the points which are covered. So we would like to have a journal which is having a good impact factor. We don't want it to charge us any fees. We want it to quickly tell us the decision on our article. So you are trying to have maximum attributes as far as possible when selecting a journal. Obviously, it is not possible practically to have all the points perfectly fitting in. Sometimes you will have to strike a balance. You'll have to compromise on certain points. So the first point which I have put here is you need to know the popular journals in your field. Okay, I'm a formulation person. So what kind of journals people are publishing in, other formulation scientists in my department or in other colleges also, those who are in area of pharmaceutics, typically which journals they are using for publication of their research work. So keep an eye, be alert, be aware of the journals which are used by your mentors, your colleagues and all in the field. That will give you some information about what are the possible avenues for you to publish. Then impact factor of the journal. Now this is a very, very important point because impact factor, it is like a certification for the journal that the journal is making an impact. What does this impact factor actually mean? It is an indication of how frequently an article from that journal is being cited. If a journal has a high impact factor, that means articles from that journal are mostly cited. They are very frequently being cited, and that is why the journal is very, very popular. So as a scientist, if I am publishing my article in a high impact factor journal, the chances of my article getting noticed by others, being read by others, being cited by others automatically increase. So everybody wants their article to be read. Everybody wants their article to be cited. Citation means I have a publication, you read my publication, and when you are writing your publication, you cite my article. You cite my publication as a reference in the bibliography at the end of your publication. So I get a citation. Citations are an important index of a scientist's popularity. That if as a scientist you are having so and so number of citations to your credit, that means that you are popular in the field. The research which you are doing is creating an impact in the field. So citations are important. And when will you get citations is when you publish in good journals, good peer-reviewed, high impact factor journals. That's when your work gets noticed and people will cite it in their manuscripts. So impact factor is nothing but your number of publications, which are there, your number of citations for those publications. So number of citations upon number of publications gives you the impact factor. So every year your impact factor list is released. Plus you even have something called as a 5-year cumulative impact factor for a journal. So if you go on any journal website, you will see this information. What is the recent impact factor, the current impact factor of the journal? Plus you will be seeing what is the cumulative impact factor of the journal. So you get a complete picture of over the 5 years, how the journal has performed, how frequently articles from that journal have been cited. So that gives you an idea about the popularity of the journal. And in most of the institutes, they will consider impact factor of the journal as an important criterion. When they are saying that their faculty should publish, they will say that at least to publish in journal having minimum impact factor of say 1.5 or 2, because they don't want you to publish in very low impact factor journals or journals which don't have an impact factor. So they may give you a criterion that you are supposed to publish at least an impact factor of 1 and above or 2 and above. So even for your incentives which are given, certain institutes, they are giving you an incentive. Like if you do good research, you publish it in a high impact factor journal, you will get some kind of an incentive. Some kind of financial support is given as a token of appreciation and encouragement for further research. So that appreciation, that incentive is also dependent on your impact factor. A person who is publishing in say impact factor 3 to 5 will get a certain incentive. Person who is publishing in impact factor 5 and more will get a higher incentive. It is just to, reward the achievement accordingly. If you are having a journal impact factor is slightly less, you will get an incentive, but that will not be very high. So there also your impact factor is making a difference. And obviously, even in your CV, when you are writing your publications, you need to mention the impact factor, because that tells that, yes, the person is really creating a meaningful impact in the community. So when you're choosing a journal, impact factor becomes a very, very important factor, which you need to be aware of. You want to publish in that journal, look up the impact factor. Is it good enough? Then you can make a choice whether you want to go ahead with that journal or not. Then consider your desired audience. This is again important. Otherwise, your article will be a misfit for that journal. Your work is addressing a particular aspect. Maybe you have published on industrial aspects, formulating the dosage form. Maybe you have published on certain pharmacological or preclinical aspects. So what is the aspect which is discussed in your work? Accordingly, it has to be read by the desired audience, people of that discipline. So in every journal, you will find on the website aims and scope. In that, they will give the audience of that journal. So that will help you to decide whether you should go ahead with that journal for your publication. Does it fit into that desired audience? Or are you putting your manuscript in a journal where it will be read by totally different discipline people, and they may not even find it relevant? So the journal will straight away reject your article saying it does not fit into our aims and scope. So it is very important that you match this. This wavelength has to match your article. What is the field you're discussing or the aspect you're discussing, and then you decide your desired audience. Then indexing status by citation databases. Why is this important? Is because your indexing gives you again an idea about, it increases the chances of your article getting noticed. So there are these different citation databases, like you are having your Web of Science or your Scopus. These are all citation databases. They include various journals in these databases. So when you look up any journal website, they will give you abstracting and indexing. That means this journal abstracts are indexed in which database. So if your journal is Scopus indexed, it is indexed in Web of Science and all, it is really an advantage for you, because then the chances of people reading your article automatically increase. So there are greater chances of your article getting noticed and getting cited. So this is again an important part to check the indexing status of your journal before choosing it for your publication. Is it indexed in PubMed? Is it indexed in Scopus? So that is very important for you to know. So indexing status is one factor. The next is the acceptance versus rejection rate. Now, there are certain journals which are known to be very, very picky and choosy. Top-notch journals, you know that the rejection rate is very, very high. The stakes are very high. There are some journals where you know that the rejection rate is not that high. So then, obviously, you don't want your manuscript to be rejected. You have to take a call and accordingly go for a journal where the rejection rate is not so high. Because obviously you are in need of a publication. This point becomes more important when you are in urgent need of a publication. As in, like, you want to finish, your degree is dependent on that. So you need a publication as a requirement. So you cannot choose a journal which has a high rejection rate. You'll be unnecessarily wasting your time. And then that journal rejects you, then you go to another journal. So this decision is based on the time. Many a times, if it is just another paper for you, you will try a big journal. And then if it rejects you, no problem. Then you have sufficient time. You'll come back to some other journal. But when time is an issue, then obviously you should not go for journals wherein the rejection rate is very high. If you are having time on your hand, it's not the sole publication on which you are dependent. It's just another publication. Then you can go for a journal of a very high impact factor. If it rejects you, then you come to a slightly lower impact factor journal. So acceptance rejection rate has to be looked into. Then peer review status. Now there is something called as your predatory journals. Predatory journals means it is money making. They will send you an invite that we are accepting manuscripts. Send your manuscript by so and so date. It will get published within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks. And many times, if the scientist or the person is that it is a predatory journal, he or she may feel happy that somebody has invited me and I have a manuscript lying with me. I want to get it, go for this. So always when you are getting such mails, check the credibility of the journal. Check the credentials of the journal. Many a times these are all fake journals, fictitious journals. They will have a website on which they will mention that this is editorial board, this is board of reviewers. But when you send them your article, it is not at all reviewed. They just want money and they will publish your article. So these kind of journals, it will have a negative impact on your CV. If you publish in a predatory journal, it is worse than not having a publication. It's like you don't have a publication, you are at zero. But if you publish in these journals, you're going into negative. So don't ever fall prey to such kind of predatory journals. Always make sure that you are having a publication in a journal which is peer reviewed. Peer reviewed means there is a proper peer review process. A reviewer is assigned to your article. It is an unbiased review. The reviewer doesn't know whose manuscript he is reviewing. At the same time, you don't know who is your reviewer. So it is a totally unbiased review. And at the end of the review process, a proper decision is taken on your manuscript. So your manuscript is going to be properly dissected, properly assessed by the people who are experienced, experts in the field. That is what we call as peer review. So even if you go in for a low impact factor journal, that is okay, but don't go in for predatory journals because it is going to be very bad that you have published in a predatory journal. That means your work was also faulty. Had it been good, you would not have done it. So that kind of an impression, that kind of a message is sent. So always keep in mind that whenever you are choosing a journal, make sure it is peer reviewed. Check the website, check the credentials of the journal, whether it is an authentic journal following proper peer review or it is a predatory journal who is just making money by publishing your manuscript straight away. Length of the review process. There are some journals which will take a very, very long time. They will take months on end, they'll keep your article. So again, you are not supposed to choose these journals if it is very, very urgent for you. You have a requirement like 2 publications have to be done for the grant of your degree, or you need this publication to be shown, like 1 publication per year you have to show in your institute. So if you're in urgent need of a publication, this becomes very important. Length of the review process. Like if it's a sole publication you want it urgently, don't go in for a journal which is going to take months on end. Few journals which will reply to you in 2-3 weeks time. So that is good enough. But there are few journals, they'll keep it for 7 months, 6 months, no reply. And they won't even send it to the reviewer. At the editor stage only, it is kept for 6-7 months and it is returned to you as it is. So you've not got any comments. You have just wasted your time. There is such a long lag time which comes in. So length of the review process is another important factor that needs to be considered. Then obviously you need to see the reputation of the publisher. So all of us are going in for say your Elsevier, or you have your ACS, reputed publishers which are known to us, your Springer or Wiley. So these are all reputed publishers. So you have to look at the reputation of the publisher, the journal, how reputed the journal is, who is the editor-in-chief, who all are there on the editorial board of the journal. So all that information also needs to be checked. Then what is the type of manuscript? Now, some journals will only take an article which is an original research article. Some of them may take a short communication, which is an abridged version of a full-length research article. Some of them only take articles like your advanced drug delivery reviews or drug discovery today. So you need to look at your type of manuscript, whether your manuscript fits in the types of manuscripts published by the journal. So this information is also available, type of manuscript, on the website of a journal, what kind of manuscripts the journal publishes. Then your review or publication fees. So nowadays, most of the journals are becoming paid. That means you have to pay a fees, then only your article will get accepted. So these fees are there. The journals are becoming open access rather than subscription. So when it is an open access journal, the author has to pay a certain amount of fees, and his journal, his article will be open access, available to all. So this review or publication fees for your international journals, it runs into dollars or pounds. So when you convert it into INR, it's a huge sum. So you'll not be able to afford it unless you are having some kind of a funding. Nowadays, when you're writing research grants, they are incorporating this publication fees in it. So that at the end of the research project, when you've executed the research grant, when you're publishing, if the journal asks for money, you have that provision in your grant itself. But otherwise, it becomes very, very huge amount of money which you have to pay. So nobody goes in for these paid journals, which are open access. You will prefer rather to pay, or prefer rather to publish in a non-paid journal where you don't have to pay these fees. Then look at the funding agency policies. If I have got a grant from some funding agency, I have to look at their policy. Some agencies, they have a strict policy that we are giving you the grant, but at the end of it, once you have executed the research grant, the work has to be published in an open access journal. So your Bill and Melinda Gates, the BMG Foundation, when they are giving grants, they usually have this kind of a criteria that you have to publish in an open access journal. So then it becomes difficult. Then for the person, it becomes difficult because your open access journals will always ask you for fees. So how will you satisfy this criteria of the funding agency without costing much? That is a difficulty which you face when your funding agency has such kind of policies. Then rights for authors. Whenever we are publishing in a journal, once our manuscript gets accepted for publication, we will be signing a copyright agreement, a copyright transfer form, wherein the copyright for our work, for our publication, is being transferred to the publisher. So if my journal, my article gets accepted in an Elsevier journal, then I am transferring the copyright to Elsevier for my article. They will publish my article. They have all the rights, but as an author, they are going to retain some of my rights. So you need to know what are those rights which you have. Like I can share the copy of my publication with, say, my institute, my department. I can share it for non-commercial purposes, like for teaching purposes and all, I can use my manuscript. So what are the rights which are retained with you as an author? You need to be aware of those. Then supplemental data. So all the data you may not be able to put in your manuscript because journal has a limit on the number of words or the number of figures, number of tables. But you would have done some other studies which you want to mention that you've done them, but you cannot include all the data pertaining to those studies. So many a times in papers, you will see, especially in case of stability studies, you have done extensive stability studies, but everything you cannot put in the paper in the form of figures and tables. So you can just put in a word in your paper that stability studies were done and the results were found to be good. For the data, you can refer the supplementary figures which are there. So your journals do allow you, they have a provision for supplemental data wherein you can put any such data which may not be able to be included in your main manuscript. Then other factors include your word limit. So as I told you, journals have a limit on the number of words of the article. You cannot have a really long manuscript. So you need to check that, because you know your work. You know approximately it will run into how many words or how many pages. So accordingly, look at the journal. Does it allow you to publish that kind of a manuscript? Does the journal allow that length of a manuscript to be published? Does the journal provide unrestricted access to all articles within a set time frame? Now, there is something called as your period for which the article is not available to all, open access, but say after 1 year, all the articles can be accessed. They are providing open access. So then it is good for you that in the first year of your publication, first year of your article, it will not be available to all. It will be available only on subscription. But later on, after 1 year, it is available in an unrestricted manner to all. So your chances of citation and all increase because now your article is available to all. Does the journal provide free reprints to the author? Now, reprint means as an author, after your article is accepted for publication, the journal gives you the final copy. The final copy, how it looks in the form of a publication in that journal, that reprint is sent to you as an author. So most of the journals, they provide free reprints. So that is good for you as a documentation. You have a proof that you have published an article. So you can keep it with you. You can even share it with some of your peers for their opinion, their inputs on your work and all. So having a reprint is always advisable for an author. When you have a publication, you should always preserve the reprint which the journal will provide you. Then look at the instructions for authors, this section on the journal website. Most of the journals will provide and detailed instructions for authors. This is very important because otherwise you will make your manuscript and then they will tell you to change it, that this should be in this format, this should not have been in this manner. So then your work increases. Rather than that, always see that the journal is having an instructions for authors section so that you can refer to that and accordingly format your manuscript before submission. And finally, is the journal an open access journal? Open access really helps you in getting citations. So whenever you have a publication in an open access journal, you will see that the citations are much more than your other publications. It's not that your other publications are not good. It is just that it's not being accessible to everyone. So that is why the citations are less. So it's always better to have a publication in an open access journal. It will be accessible to everyone, so your citations increase. But the problem is the cost. Most of the open access journals, they will have money associated, and that runs into a huge amount when you convert it into INR. So that's why people don't usually publish in an open access journal unless you have funding with you to put those expenses of open access charges. So that was about selection of a journal. How do I select a particular journal for my work? Now, once you have made the decision, okay, I will go ahead with, say, International Journal of Pharmaceutics for my manuscript. What next? You have to get started. After you have selected your journal, the first thing you have to do is you have to go to the journal website and download the instructions for authors or guide for authors section. This is an important step because if you don't follow this later on, after your manuscript has been submitted, it may be rejected by the editor. At the editorial stage itself, they will say that your manuscript is not as per our specifications. So to avoid that kind of a situation, always before preparing your manuscript, before drafting it, download the guide for authors or instructions for authors of the journal where you intend to submit your manuscript. What information is given in these instructions to authors? You will have the interest and scope of the journal. Like I told you, the journal targets what kind of audiences, what kind of work that journal publishes, that you will find in these instructions to authors. Then you will also have information about what are the different manuscript types the journal publishes, the word limit and all. There will also be detailed instructions on formatting your manuscript. Formatting means what should be the font, what should be the line spacing, what should be the font size, the type of font, the line spacing, how do you format your tables, how do you format your figures, the resolution of the figures, everything would be mentioned here, the formatting aspects of your manuscript. So go through those author guidelines in detail. Many a times what authors do is the author guidelines is downloaded. They see it is 10 pages, 14 pages. Who will read so much? So they have downloaded it, but then they are not bothered to read it. So what is important is that you go through it in detail and highlight whatever points are relevant for your article. So I religiously follow this habit till date. Whenever I am selecting a journal for my article, what I do is I download the author guidelines. It is around 14 to 15 pages. What am I doing is I'm reading it word by word and I highlight in it. I highlight in the PDF, in the soft copy itself, whatever points are of relevance to me, so that I can come back to it. Why are you highlighting is once your manuscript is ready, you will have a checklist. Whether I have checked this point as per author guidelines, whether I have done this figures as per author guidelines, references as per author guidelines, then I can do that mapping. If I have highlighted first only whatever aspects need to be done as per the author guidelines. So what are you going to highlight in the author guidelines? You are going to highlight the spacing, the line spacing, the font, specifications, abstract. Abstract, many journal author guidelines, you will see it is 200 words or 250 words. If you don't read that, you will write your own abstract, which is not of that many words. What will happen at the time of uploading your manuscript? They ask you to put your abstract in a box. You type your abstract or you paste your abstract in that box. That box will not take your abstract if the number of words is exceeding, because it is designed in that way. It will not take your abstract if the number of words is exceeding. Then what do you have to do? Again, you sit to edit. So it's a waste of time for you. Had you read the author guidelines before, you would have made your abstract accordingly. But what you did not read it. So you made your abstract wrong in a wrong way. And now when you're uploading, again, you have to edit your abstract. So always look at these aspects. The reference styling. Many a times you will get a comment from the editor, your references are not as per our specification. So look at the style of references. Every journal will have a different type of a reference styling, and they will mention that in the author guidelines. And not only the author guidelines, what I generally do is I even download 2 recent articles of that journal. Like if today is like February, if I want to upload a manuscript in the coming week, what I will do is I will see the latest articles of that journal which have been published, the latest issue. I look at the formatting there. What is the reference style used? How is the abstract structured? What is the number of figures, number of tables? So that will give me a kind of an idea. So use that author guidelines. At the same time, see some recent articles, just 1 or 2, not many. Just see some recent articles of that journal, which will give you an idea about what they expect, the formatting aspects. Then length of the manuscript, look at that also. Are they specifying the number of pages with so font size, so and so line spacing, or are they specifying number of words? So you need to look into that, because if they are specifying, you have not seen it, then again your manuscript will fail as per their specifications. Then criteria for authorship. How do we define who is going to be an author on our paper? This becomes very, very important in a research paper, because in a research paper, you have done some research work. So you will have a lot of people who would have helped you in 1 or 2 studies, who would have provided you some material you needed for your studies, some kind of software they have provided you for your statistical purposes, or any kind of contribution. Do you give all of them authorship? The answer is no. You have to define the criteria for authorship. Nowadays, your journals which are there, they have something called as a credit author statement. Credit author statement is nothing but it is defining the contribution of each author enlisted in the submission. Like if I'm submitting a research paper today, I have enlisted 5 authors. I am one of them. I'm the corresponding author, and there are 4 others. In the credit author statement, I will have to write the role for each one of us. Okay, Priyanka Prabhu, what was her role? There is some other author enlisted. What is his role in the manuscript? So that is to avoid any kind of gift authorship or false authorship type of situations. There should not be any authorship related disputes. So that is why journals are asking for define the role of each contributor, each author or co-author which you have enlisted. So the criteria for authorship is the person should have contributed substantially in terms of intellectual inputs, conceptualization of the project, designing the project, the experimental part, executing the experimental part, and then interpreting the results. At all these stages, the person should have been involved, or at least at one of these stages. It should not be that you are giving someone authorship as a gift. The person has not really added value, not really made a difference to your paper, and you are just for satisfying that person's ego or just to make that person happy, you are giving the person a gift authorship. Now, these are the different parts of the manuscript. So one by one, I'll just quickly take you through each part. What are you supposed to focus on with respect to each of these parts of a manuscript, and what are the mistakes which you're supposed to be avoiding? So we'll begin with the title. So when you talk about the title is the first thing which anybody is going to see in your paper. Title is the first thing which anybody is going to be looking at when they search your paper or when they download your paper. So that title has to be accurate. It should not be ambiguous or vague. It should give the reader a proper idea about what the paper is. Because looking at the title, if I feel confused, I will not feel like even downloading the paper and reading it. Why waste my time? I'm not able to follow only what the paper is talking about. So title has to be accurate, complete, and specific. If I have made a anti-cancer formulation, I cannot give a very, very generic title or a broad title. Your title needs to be specific. Many a times in your thesis, we are giving a broad title. That is different. But for your publication, the title has to be very, very specific. What have you made? Whether it's a polymeric formulation or whether it is a lipid-based formulation, what is the cancer you have made it for? All that needs to be clear in the title so that when the person reads the title in one go, he or she understands what the work is about. And it has to be concise. You cannot have a long title. There is a limit which your journals have with respect to the number of characters in the title. Title has to have some catchy words, some words which will attract the reader. So your title preferably is to be coined at the end. You have read the entire manuscript, your manuscript is ready. That time you can spend some time on, selecting that perfect title which matches your content, which is there after the abstract. So exercise some thought and creativity in selecting a title. You can have inputs taken from your co-authors also that, what do you think? You can have some 3-4 titles shortlisted and then you can brainstorm and select one of them. There are some phrases to avoid like investigation, study, novel. Everybody feels their work is novel. So these are some terms which are to be avoided when you are coining an title for your article. Then coming to your abstract. Now, why is abstract important? Because abstract is like a trailer. Your decision to watch a movie depends on the trailer. You first see the trailer. If the trailer looks promising to you, impressive to you, you will decide, okay, I can watch this movie. It looks interesting. So even in your abstract, the same thing applies. The person will first read the abstract. And many a times, open access is not there. Only the abstract is accessible to the reader. So then, if the reader finds your abstract worthy, then he will to get access to the complete article. Then the reader will try to get the complete article. If they are not able to, you fail to attract their interest through the abstract itself, they will not read your article. So your abstract has to be again properly drafted. It has to talk about what is the problem you are trying to address in the paper. Define the problem first. Don't directly say, I have done this. What is the topic you are talking about? Okay, I have made a formulation for malaria. So first to set the stage that what was the need of the hour, what is the problem to be investigated, and then what you did to address it. So define the problem to be investigated. And during your peer review process, many a times referees are only sent the abstract. When they are sending your manuscript to the reviewer, to the referee, they are not sending the complete manuscript. They will only send the abstract, and then they will take approval from that reviewer that he is ready to review, and then the full manuscript would be sent. So if your abstract is ambiguous, the reviewer will not be able to understand. The reviewer goes through the abstract. If he finds it interesting, something new, something of value, then only he or she will want to review it. So your abstract has to be attractive. When I say attractive, it's not that you use flowery language and hi-fi English. When I say attractive, it has to be of substance. It should be giving a complete idea in a nutshell about what you are discussing in the paper. So state your objectives, the scope of the investigation, and in brief, describe what you have done, the method employed. Okay, I made this carrier by this method, some green technology you've used. So describe it in short in the abstract. Summarize your results, your key results. Abstract has a word limit. You cannot put in every result, but what was your final key result? The principal conclusion, how you have done something to address the problem which you defined in the beginning. And avoid any kind of figures, tables, references, footnotes, abbreviations, symbols, equations in your abstract. So if you've seen an abstract, it will always be textual. Text would be there. You will avoid your footnotes or references or abbreviations and symbols and all in it, and keep it short and sweet, like 150 to 200 words. Don't be too enthusiastic to put everything in the abstract. Keep something for the rest of the paper also. Abstract is just like a trailer. It has to be brief, it has to be concise. At the same time, it has to be succinct. It has to be completely describing all aspects of your paper. So it is an art to write an abstract. When we were writing abstracts, I remember I used to find it very tough because I used to feel everything is important in my paper. Like, how do I write it into 200 words? So then my guide is to help me that this is what you choose. This is what, you can do away without. So that is how you take a call. You have to summarize the key aspects of your paper in 200 words. Keywords again are important because in your keywords, they'll be using keywords to cross-index the article. Whatever keywords you have put, when somebody puts those keywords, is your article coming up in the hits which are shown. So you have to coin keywords wisely. Your keywords should not be from any of the words which are already a part of your title. So those keywords should be related to the main topic of your research. And keywords, if they are chosen properly, they will increase your citations because you have given the proper keyword for your manuscript. So your manuscript will be shown when anybody punches in those keywords. Your manuscript will be a part of the hits which appear. And obviously, when the visibility is increasing of your manuscript, if it is a good, well-written manuscript, the chances of its citation will also increase. So keywords are important. You have to spend some time on coining the proper keywords. So usually 5 to 6 keywords would be asked by journals for an article. Then coming to your introduction part. Introduction again has to be very, very attractive, because this is the first thing you read when you have downloaded the full article. When an article is sent to me as a reviewer, I will first read the introduction, and that kind of, either you feel attracted, you feel interested towards the article, or it just puts you off. The introduction is only poorly written. I wonder what the rest of the article will be. So introduction is like a first impression is the last impression. So your introduction is going to be read first when the article is being read. So make sure that the introduction is written properly. It attracts the reader, it pulls the reader, it makes the reader absorbed in your manuscript. So you have to provide a clear rationale why this problem deserves new research. Okay, I am working in malaria. I have to tell that how serious the problem of malaria is. So you have to set the stage. You have to set the stage, define the problem statement, define the need of the hour, why research needs to be done, what is the lacunae, what is the problem. You have to define that and try to place your study in the context of current knowledge. That, okay, so far this exists for malaria, this does not exist. So that is why I am proposing this. So you have to fit in your study in the big scheme of things, in the current status of the field. Describe the background and context of your work. Don't just directly start, I have made this. What made you think of making a lipid-based carrier? So you will have to refer to some prior art from others or your own work. You have worked before that in that area and you have found this. So this, prompted you to extend it further. So that kind of background has to be given. Background and context for your work. The stage has to be set and then you introduce what you have done in the present paper. So you will have to give some prior art, a short overview of the relevant literature. Now, this short overview is very important. Sometimes people write such a big introduction like a mini review article, 3-4 pages. That is not needed. Just one paragraph is enough to set the stage for what prior art exists and what you are proposing. So say why the present work needs to be done. Some mild criticism of earlier work may be necessary. Now, mild criticism means you say that this has been done so far for malaria, but those studies have not addressed this aspect. Mild criticism means you just put it that this idea or this aspect has not been addressed before. Don't criticize someone else's work. It doesn't look good. Or this person has done an incomplete study. That is why I have done this. Don't put it that way. Mild criticism means you just say that this particular aspect has not been addressed before. So this work is addressing that aspect, that angle. So you have to define the goals of your paper, how different your paper is. If there are similar papers, what is new in the method you have adopted or in the results which you have got. So what's new, that factor has to be coming out in your introduction. Otherwise, the reviewer will feel that this is just another paper, just like a Me Too paper. This paper is also talking about like 100 papers have already been published on this. So you have to highlight that. You have to emphasize on the novelty factor. What new have you done? What different have you done in this particular paper? So after the introduction, the next part is your materials and methods. Now in this materials and methods, you need to describe what you have done, how you have done. Why is this section important? Is because if anyone wants to do a similar experiment, you are educating the person of how it needs to be done. So this has to be mentioned in detail. If I have made polymeric nanoparticles, which polymer I have used, what is the grade, all that needs to be mentioned. Your excipient grade, your excipient source, the method which you have used, the parameters, the processing parameters for the method, all that needs to be defined. And you have to be using the third person. Like HPMC was taken, it was soaked overnight. That way you need to describe it using the third person. You don't write that I have taken, I have made polymeric nanoparticles. So there has to be past tense. It was taken, was kept overnight, was dried. The author should use the third person. And if your study involves animals, you will have to have IAEC approval, Institutional Animal Ethics Committee approval, because they will ask you for it. If you have not put it in your article, they will specifically ask where is the IAEC approval, the number of your protocol that it was approved. If your study involves human subjects like clinical trial papers, then also you need a statement from your IRB approval, Institutional Review Board approval, and informed consent from the volunteers or the patients. Other aspects which you include in your materials and methods is how you have prepared the sample, from where was the sample or material procured, your excipients or your cell culture, cell lines or your animals which you have procured. So all these protocols have to be described in detail. Any kind of statistical techniques you have used when you're applying stats to your data, that also needs to be mentioned. Like, okay, I've done Bonferroni test, I've done the Tukey-Kramer test. What software you have used? You've used GraphPad Prism or you've used some other software. So that has to be mentioned in your materials and methods. Mention the make of your equipment. Like, okay, you use Zetasizer, what is the model? So mention the equipment setup when you are discussing your materials and methods. Then the results. Now results are the main crux of the paper, the heart of the paper, because results are what you have got at the end of the time you have spent on that particular project. So make sure your results are projected in the best possible way. You have to put your best foot forward when you're talking about results. Now, when I say it is, you have to put your best foot forward, doesn't mean that you overstate your results. You be very, very exaggerating that I got this, that's so great. You have to be understated, but the impact of your results should be highlighted in a subtle way. So it is how you present your results. Doing your experiments is one thing, getting results is another thing, but presenting your results, documenting your results in a proper way is everything. And that is what your journals are looking for, how the results are projected, how they are presented. So the result section is going to be written in the past tense. That it was found that so and so, it is always going to be written in the past tense. You will have figures and tables. That goes without saying. Your results are never only textual. If you pick up any research paper, you will have figures, you will have tables, because that is giving the author an idea about what kind of results were obtained. So the figures and tables which you incorporate are very, very important in your paper, both in terms of quantity as well as quality. You are not supposed to have too many figures or too many tables. And within each figure and each table, it should be self-explanatory. It should stand for itself. The reader should not be confused that what is this table telling about? Where does this come? Where does this fit in the story? So the reader should not be forced to go back and forth between the text and the table or the text and the figure to connect the figure or table to the manuscript. The reader should understand when he looks at table 1, okay, this is talking about this aspects of the study. So that has to be standalone, that has to be self-explanatory, and you need to decide what am I going to put in the form of a figure, what am I going to put in the form of a table. That distinction is also very, very important. So we are usually going in for figures when there is a trend, a relationship to be displayed. I want to depict how your y-axis value is changing as a function of the x-axis value. You're trying to show some pattern or trend or relationship. That time you go in for a figure. And where the exact numbers are important, there is lot of data, lot of numbers. I will not go in for a figure. It will make things complicated. I will go in for a table. So you have to get this distinction clear, and don't put something in tabular form also, in figure form also. It's going to be unnecessary duplication of results. So you have to be wise in making a choice whether to go for figure or for table. How many figures, how many tables? And within that figure and table, I need to make it self-explanatory. I need to make it reader-friendly. When the reader reads it, he is able to get the gist of it. It is not confusing. He can connect it with the manuscript. So in your results, be concise. See, in our thesis, everything will be included. We have worked for 3 years or whatever time period. But are you going to include everything in the paper? They don't want to know whatever you did during your PhD. That is your thesis. In your publication, in your research paper, you have to be choosing the important results. So be concise, pre-select the results which you're going to include in your publication, and then think about presenting them in the manuscript. So in the results section, you only have to describe the results. This is very important. Sometimes we've seen what authors are doing in a manuscript, which we get for reviewing, is in the results only they are tempted to discuss. They are tempted to discuss the results in the results section. You're not supposed to do that. There is a separate discussion section. There is a separate discussion section wherein you are going to talk about what results you have obtained. There you will be discussing in detail about the interpretation of the results. So in the results section, you only describe the results, do not interpret them too much. In the discussion section, you can go in for the interpretation and comparison with the prior art or with the existing literature. So in your discussion is again very, very important. Sometimes when we are reviewing papers, we just see that only results have been, documented. This was done, this was obtained. This for this experiment, this was obtained. But what is its significance? Try to connect it. Try to connect it with your hypothesis. That okay, this was your aim. You wanted to address this problem. That's why you made this formulation. And now through these results, how are you able to, achieve your goal of addressing that problem? So everything which you do in the discussion part, you are supposed to connect it. Place your key findings in the scientific and clinical context. How does it matter? See, whenever you do a study, it has to have some connection with whatever you're trying to accomplish. It's not that, just to increase the numbers, to increase data, you are doing a number of studies. Every study has to have importance, and its discussion part should connect it with your main goal, which you have defined, the problem statement. Sometimes you may combine your discussion with your results section. Some journals may ask you for a combined results and discussion, or some of them may keep it distinct. The two things are separate. Again, in discussion, don't make it a very long discussion, very boring to read. It should not be more than a few paragraphs. So you will refer to some prior art, you will cite some prior experiments which others have done, or probably you only have done. You can have some prior art reference given, and then what is new in this study? What is your key takeaway from this present study? At the end of the discussion, what is the moral of the story? You have to discuss the impact of your results on clinical practice or patient outcome of research. What have you accomplished? How is it going to really provide an advancement in the field in terms of patient care? This is very important. Discuss the limitations of your study. Everybody wants to be appreciated. You want your work to be, appreciated. You will exaggerate that in this work we've done this, we got this, it is great, it will do this. You will only present the positive parts. But what about the limitations of your study? Every study will have some limitations. Limitations in the sense, it is not possible for you to do everything in one manuscript. Like, okay, you have made a formulation. There are some studies which need to be done further. Probably you have only done up to the in vitro stage. You need to do it in vivo models, pharmacokinetics. So then you can mention that this study has not addressed in vivo pharmacokinetic studies, but we will be doing that. Studies are underway or future studies are planned on those lines. That way you can write. So one also has to be a little critical for one's own work. In the introduction, what did we say? Mild criticism about prior art. At the end of the discussion, we have to do some mild criticism of ourselves also. When I say mild criticism, it is not that, you are saying that your work is insufficient or your work is, incomplete. What you're saying is that some one or two angles, aspects which have not been addressed here can be addressed. So it's like you are giving an extension scope of your work, how the work can be extended. So you would have seen in papers, sometimes they are writing that, okay, we have seen the efficacy in this disease, but this same work can be extended to other similar diseases. So that is how you need to even mention some pitfalls of your study, whether some aspects still need to be further studied. End your discussion with realistic conclusions. Don't be too exaggerating. Don't be overstating your conclusion and be very pompous in what you have got. So end your discussion with realistic conclusions. Your conclusion should be understated, and whatever you're writing in your conclusion, you should have evidence for it. Your data should support your conclusion. It should not be that data is low and conclusion you have done, you're stating big things. It is overstated. So finally, end your discussion with one or two sentences about how the work will be continued. So use present tense except when describing previous work. So in this discussion, you can write it in the present tense that this work is able to address this aspect. So you can write it in the present tense, but when you're referring to prior art, describing your own previous work or others' previous work, you will be using the past tense. Then conclusion, we've already seen it has to be realistic, it has to be concise. State what implications the study would have in healthcare. What are the effects of your study? How will it help the field to advance? Conclude only what you have evidence for. Conclude only what you have evidence for is very, very important, because we are so happy about our work. And I've seen this as a student also. We used to sometimes make mistakes. We used to write that, then and madam used to tell us that, have we shown that? Have we done that data? And then we are like, no, but then it can be done. It can be done. Yes. But then don't write that way. That, this is because you've not addressed that angle. Sometimes it may be intentional. Sometimes inadvertently, you tend to overstate your conclusions. So keep control on that. Don't be too pompous and too overstating your results and conclusion. In a subtle way, you have to write the impact, no doubt. You have to make your paper stand for itself in front of the reviewer. You have to mention everything, what you have done and all. But don't be too pompous and don't be exaggerating. Data is showing 50% potential. You are writing in the conclusion as if it is perfect, 70-80%. So don't do that. There has to be a match, and reviewers can catch that. Mind you, reviewers are very, very experienced people. They are able to catch even small things. They are able to catch that they have written here something else only and data. And if you see, when we are reviewing papers now, the parameters which are given to us as a reviewer, they will tell me, does the study address the problem being defined? For that, there is a scale given, 7 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 or 1 out of 10. The study does not address only. So then as a reviewer now, I come to know that these are the points on which the reviewer is going to assess my paper. It's going to rip my paper. So as an author, I need to be careful when I'm writing the paper. So mind you, reviewing a paper gives you a lot of learning. When I was doing my PhD, my research guide is to give all PhD students in the lab papers to review. And that time we did not really understand its importance. We were like, how can we review? Because we ourselves are doing our PhD. And if the paper happened to be on lipid carriers or on malaria, madam will send it to me for review. Someone else is working on cancer and all, that person is to be given those kind of papers for review. And we were like in a learning phase. We were like, why are we being asked to review papers? But then today, when I look back to those experiences, I really feel that it was so helpful. Because when you review a paper, they give you certain pointers. A reviewer is given certain pointers on which he's supposed to assess the paper. So now you know that when your paper goes to the reviewer, what all he is going to see, what all you're going to be evaluated for. So it becomes easy for you in your journey when you're writing your paper to avoid those mistakes. Because now I know that if I do this on that criteria, the reviewer will, catch me, or the reviewer will give me less points. So you know what not to do when you go through that reviewing experience. It is a learning experience. Always when you get a chance to review papers, go for it. Sometimes we feel that, okay, this is not going to pay me any money. Your reviewership, which is there, it is voluntary. When you're reviewing papers for journals, you don't get any monetary this thing for it. And you feel that it's going to take my time, but always take it up. They give you 2 weeks time, or maybe sometimes they give you more, but usually it is 2-3 weeks. They expect the paper to be reviewed, but it is a learning experience. You learn so much through that experience, that what kind of work people are doing and how the paper is being evaluated. And there is a difference from journal to journal. When I'm reviewing for this journal, these parameters are given. Some other journals are giving some other additional parameter. So more or less it is the same, but there are some small differences. So always, if you're getting a chance to review a paper, your guide is giving it to you, don't think of it as additional work, that why am I being given paper. Think of it as a learning experience. Trust me, whatever I have learned in my journey so far, a lot of it has been from reviewing papers for my research guide, or even reviewing papers now as a faculty. So it will really help you to understand the other side of the fence. Because when we write, we feel we have done a great job. We want it to be published. But when you look at it from the other side as a reviewer, what is it that they are evaluating you for? So that is about your conclusion. Conclude only what you have evidence for. References are again important. Don't be, overlook this part of the paper. That, the main thing is all that introduction, materials, methods, results, discussion. References are just there at the end, an unimportant part of the paper. Don't do that, because references, why they are given is, one thing, you have to give credit to the idea and findings of others. And secondly, you are directing your readers to sources of further information. When I'm reading an article, I find something of interest to me, I look back in the references, which is this paper, I should download that paper and read it. That interests you. So it is kind of information for the reader, and plus you have to give credit to others who are working in the field. Sometimes I have got these kind of comments for my papers, wherein we have included most of the studies, but then they say that this study has been done by so-and-so group. By this group et al., you have not included it in your bibliography. So then we need to include it. We need to address the comment of the reviewer that this particular study was missed out from our side. So it is very important that you are reading your literature, who all have worked in that area. It's not that, you only are working in that area. Give credit to others' work also. Refer to their work in your manuscript only if it fits in. It's not that, you want to give your colleague a citation, so zabardasti you will put in his work in your work. Don't do that, because the reviewers can catch that. They will tell that this article need not be cited. It is out of context in this paper. So you have to be choosing your references wisely, what kind of work you need to refer to when you are writing a manuscript. And this is very important. Check the referencing style. When we get student papers, when we are mentoring students, they will submit you a draft and I ask them that, is this as per IJP style? They're like, ma'am, hoga and hoga nahi, because IJP or any other journal has a specific referencing style. And this is not a big deal. You have your reference management softwares, in that you can select the required reference style. So spend some time on references also. That is what I want to tell, that references are not something unimportant. Ki end mein hai wo chota sa part, uske upar zyada dhyan nahi dena. It's not like that. You have to have references also being given their due importance. And what you should reference? You should reference peer-reviewed journal articles. That is also important. Don't reference anything from predatory journals. That is also bad. Don't, have references which are, doubtful, because the reviewers, the editors will see that also, that this person has referenced almost all web references, which are, you don't even know about their credibility. See, web references all are not bad. If you're taking it from an authentic site, like your WHO site or your CDC and all, it is obviously acceptable. But if you're taking it, from some kind of your Wikipedia or some other source wherein it's not really considered as an authentic source, a peer-reviewed source, so then don't go for such kind of references. You can go for online references from, say, US FDA website, authentic websites, which are being managed in a proper way. Whatever content is being uploaded on them is authentic. So make sure that the references you are referring to are authentic. Don't reference your non-peer reviewed works. That means like a thesis, which has not yet been in the public domain. Don't refer such kind of works, or personal communications which are there. Don't refer these kind of works. Your work should be peer reviewed journal articles or patents or conference abstracts which have been published, conference proceedings. All those are considered as your authentic sources, or even books for that matter. Then this is something about how you cite the references. Now, how you cite the references, there are different reference styles. Sometimes it's numbering format, where the first sentence in the article will have reference cited as 1, then this 2, 3, and so on. And at the end, it is again number wise, the bibliography. Sometimes you may have alphabetically. The end of the article, the references are enlisted alphabetically, and in the article, when you're citing the reference, it is name of the author and the year. Name of the author followed by the year. So all these details you will get in the journal author guidelines. Like if there are more than one authors, they will not expect you to write all the author names. Sometimes you will see in research papers, there are like 10 authors, 12 authors and all also. It's a collaborative work. There are people from different disciplines. So you're not going to put in all. So then they'll say only write the names of the first author and then et al. So look at that. Look at the journal guidelines. If there are 2 authors, then you write both their names. If there are more than 3, then you write first author and et al. Then if there are 2 references from the same year, if more than one reference share the same year, then how do you write them? There is one statement which is being taken from 2 references. So both those references are from the same year. Then you have to arrange them alphabetically within that year. So you have to look at these author guidelines. The reference styling needs to be looked at before drafting your manuscript. Then acknowledgements, very, very important. We do the work. When we need something, we approach those people. I need this help. And at the end, I fail in my duty if I don't acknowledge them. So make sure that acknowledgements is also properly written. See, these are small sections which come at the end, but they are also important. They are not there for the heck of it. Why have I included all this is because these are also important aspects of your paper which cannot be neglected or ignored. So acknowledgements are placed between the end of your regular text where your manuscript ends and the references. End of your manuscript is your conclusion. After that, you have your acknowledgements before the references. So in acknowledgements, you have to acknowledge people who have contributed to the work but do not meet criteria of authorship. So don't acknowledge an author. author is already there in the below the title only. You have enlisted the authors. All those who have helped you in some small way, they don't meet the criteria of authorship, but you have to acknowledge their help or their guidance. So if somebody has given you some kind of intellectual assistance, like just going through the manuscript, if there is, the flow is proper, if there are any small grammatical errors and all, sometimes we tend to give it to someone, some colleague of ours, that my manuscript is ready. I just want you to have a look through it. So then you can acknowledge that person. You don't have to, really mention him as an author or anything. Just have to give, there is some kind of intellectual assistance. The person has reviewed the manuscript, how it is. You can give an acknowledgement. There is some kind of technical help. Like I told you, one study you want to analyze the data for, you have some doubt, like, okay, I am not an analysis person, I'm a formulation person. So in my FTIR data, I happen to have a doubt. So I just go to an analysis faculty and I just show him that data, the spectrum, and he or she helps me, like ye peak is for this peak is for that. Some small help in interpretation of that FTIR. I can always acknowledge that this study, this piece of data result was interpreted by so and so person. So thank you for interpreting my data of confocal or flow cytometry, whatever it is. You can just mention that kind of technical help in acknowledgements, or somebody has given you some cell line, somebody has given you some other material which you have used, some polymer gift sample has been provided, mention it in acknowledgements. Then outside financial assistance, if you have got some kind of a grant, some kind of a fellowship, so always you have to acknowledge your funding body. If I am doing PhD under UGC fellowship, in every paper I have to thank UGC for providing me fellowship. Because of them, I could do PhD, and because of them, I could execute that research, which is coming in that research paper. So acknowledgements, very important. Don't forget to acknowledge all those people who contribute. Then conflict of interest. Now, conflict of interest is something wherein authors sometimes are confused at what is it exactly. They fail to understand that what is conflict of interest exactly. Now, conflict of interest for a given manuscript will exist when a participant in the peer review process, the publication process, has ties to some activities which could affect his judgment, which could inappropriately influence his or her judgment. So there could be some kind of bias. Like if there is a paper which is reporting that some polymer from some company is excellent, and I have shares in that company, I have some profits in that company, then obviously I cannot be reviewing that paper, because I'll have a bias that if this paper comes in public domain, that company will be benefited and I will be benefited because I have some interest in that company. So that is one example of a conflict of interest. There could be some other conflict of interest as well. If I am having some personal relation with that author, like my cousin's paper is there, so obviously I will want my cousin's paper to be published. Or if it is my collaborator, there is some kind of conflict of interest. So as an author, you need to be aware when you're writing a manuscript, you need to declare if there are any kind of conflicts of interest, wherein you are having some kind of, the work you have done, you have used a polymer from a particular industry, you are having some kind of stakes in that. I am a consultant in that industry and their polymer I am using, and I'm saying that it is very, very nice. So then it is sort of a conflict of interest. So you have to declare conflict of interest. Sometimes there could be personal relationships, which can be a conflict of interest, academic competition. So one has to be declaring the relevant conflict of interest. If there is no conflict of interest, write a statement. So this peer review process, public trust in the peer review process is based on how well conflict of interest is handled. So as an author, you have to submit a declaration that there is no conflict of interest. And even for reviewers, this holds true. Like when you are reviewing a paper, if you get a paper wherein you know the author, then obviously you're supposed to tell that it will be a conflict of interest. I cannot review the paper. You disqualify yourself from reviewing the manuscript. Then coming to tables. So in case of tables, we've already seen when to use a table and when to use a figure. So figures are always easier to read than tables. When you are making a table, keep it short. Keep the title of the table short. Make sure you're referring to every table in the text. There has to be a call out in the text for every table. You have to align your columns properly in the table. Columns have to be given proper headings with units. Many a times the table is reporting particle size data. Units are not mentioned, or disintegration time, whether it's in seconds, whether it's in minutes. So make sure units are also given due attention. The table may have a footnote to indicate some symbols and all which you've used. Figures, again, very, very important part of the paper. Figures have to be having good resolution. So the author guidelines would mention that 600 dpi, 1000 dpi. The figure should have a neat legible label. They have to be simple, properly formatted, indicate the error bar, standard deviation, give a detailed caption. The kind of font which you use to write on the figure, to give the axis labels and all, have to be proper. You don't use Times New Roman. You preferably use Arial or Helvetica font. And at least it should be in the size of 16 to 24. Then make sure you are referring each figure in the text. Each figure should have a caption. The figure caption has to be, again, self-explanatory. It should tell the reader what the figure is about. Don't interpret the figure in the caption. Interpretation is done in the text of the article. So a caption is just giving you an idea about what the figure is depicting. Then this we've already discussed, when to use a table, when to use a figure. When you are showing a trend or relationship, make sure you are using a figure. If there are multiple numbers, lot of data values to show, go for a table, wherein the exact number is important. Now, these are some general points in writing. Don't use informal language that we got the following result, right? We obtained. Like small words which are there, don't use slang language. We can't include, we cannot include. So these are some small tips here and there. Then coming to your tenses. Use of tense is very proper, very important. You have to use the proper tense. When you are writing the abstract, you have to be writing it in the past tense when you are discussing previous results that previous studies have shown. So and so group have shown. Use the past tense. Present tense for conclusions. Thus, this study shows that. Introduction, again, you will be fluctuating between past and present tense. When you want to tell some established fact, that you will be telling in the present tense. When you want to tell a particular fact which is a result of one experiment or someone's work, then you have to refer past tense. So and so I have shown that. Methods and results, again, it's past tense, what was done, how it was done. Discussion, past and or present tense. So even in discussion, when you're telling that this paper thus indicates or shows promise, it will be present tense. But when will it be past tense in discussion? When you are referring to someone else's prior done work. So use of tenses, different parts of the paper use different tenses. So you need to keep that in mind. When a fact has been published or established, you will use the present tense. When the fact is not generalized, but it is based on a specific experiment, it has been found out, you use the past tense. So when observations have been repeated, or go from past to present, you use present perfect. We have shown that. When referring to figures or tables, use present tense. Table 1 depicts so and so results. Then coming to your, how do you document your numbers? Whether I write it in words or whether I write numbers. So the rule is for numbers 10 and above, you will be using figure. For below 10, you will be using words. So we conducted 3 experiments. So I'm writing 3 here in words. 48 Petri dishes were used. So the number is about 10. So I am not writing it in words, but at the same time, don't start a sentence with a number. So this is wrong. If I'm writing 48 Petri dishes were used, I have to write 48 Petri dishes were used, 48 in words. Why? Because here it is at the beginning of the sentence. Otherwise, about 10, you can use numbers for figures. You don't have to use words. So these are small things which you need to keep in mind. Use figures whenever the number is followed by a unit. I added 3 ml of distilled water. Instead of that, it's better to add 3 in figures here. I added 3 ml of distilled water. So whenever there is a number followed by units, you make sure that you write the figure and not in words. When there are several numbers appearing in the same sentence, express them in the same way. Like we conducted 4 experiments in May, 5 in June, then mention all of them in the same way. Although you may say that 4 and 5, which is there, I could have written it in words because it is less than 10. But I want to keep uniformity. So what we are doing here is we are writing every number 4, 5, and 11 in figures. Then use of articles where we make a mistake. A, an, and the. These are your articles. So your definite article is the, and indefinite article is a and an. So when to use the definite article and the indefinite article? Indefinite article is going to be used when you are introducing something for the first time, which you have not introduced before in your manuscript. We observed an or we observed a. But when you are referring to something which is already mentioned in the manuscript, you can refer to as the. The formulation was taken that way. Now, how do you start writing an article? This is different for different people, but as a general rule, you start with your figures and tables because that is what you have, your results in the form of figures and tables. Then you write your methods, how you've done the experiments. Then you write your discussion based on your results, interpret your results in the discussion. Then finally write the conclusion and introduction. And last, you will come to your title and abstract because this needs some kind of brainstorming. Title has to be catchy. It has to be coined properly. Abstract also, it needs good editing skills. As I told you, I always used to find it difficult to, cramp up everything into those 200 words. Like I want to write everything. This is also important. That is also important. But somewhere you have to concise it into an abstract. So keep this at the end, your title and your abstract. And this is again a very important tip, which I always tell students, do not turn in a first draft. Always check your article as many times as possible because when you read it each time, trust me, you will find new mistakes. First time when you read it, everything looks good. You read it after 2 days, then you find, okay, this ye kaise reh gaya? This mistake is there. So always make sure that you are rereading it. Rewriting is very important. Fine tune your article. So be your harshest critic, read it properly. When I say read it for all aspects. Is the flow proper? Are there punctuation mistakes? Are there grammatical mistakes? Are there spelling mistakes? All that needs to be checked. It's better you tear your paper, you rip into your paper. Otherwise, someone else will point out your mistakes, which is obviously not desirable. Also share your paper with your co-authors. Don't be selfish. I am the corresponding author. I will only do everything. I have written the manuscript. I will now submit it. I'm not going to tell anything to the co-authors. I'm giving them authorship. They've got what they wanted. That is not the way. When you are working in collaboration, always take their inputs because two minds think differently. I may miss out something. That person may be able to give me a fresh perspective on my paper. So always share your paper with all your co-authors. It is their duty and responsibility to guide you, to check if something is wrong in your paper, anything of value can be added, anything can be done, presented in a better way. So take their inputs, and this manuscript checklist is always important. To this day, I make this for all my papers. When I am uploading a paper, before uploading, I have a checklist wherein I have enlisted all the parameters and I go on ticking it, that this is taken care of. So my manuscript is good to go. So do this as a habit so that you don't miss out on any small point. So the first thing I do is go through the article, read it like a story and see if the sentence formation is proper. Then I look at the spellings. Then I look at the line spacing if it is proper. I see the punctuations if they are proper. Figures, I look at the figures if the resolution and format is taken care of. TIFF or JPG, what the journal is asking for. Tables, are they proper? The alignment and all. References, are they proper? Many a times in references, journals, they don't want the full name of the journal. They want the abbreviation. So then you have to check whether your reference styling is proper. The journals are abbreviated properly. Abbreviations, very important. When I'm checking papers, mostly I find students are just choosing abbreviations. Full form is never mentioned. Tell them always that you have to mention the full form first time and then use the abbreviation throughout the manuscript. So these are small points, but yes, we always encounter these mistakes. Why? Because they have not been looked into. Italicizing your terms, writing something in italics is again a very common mistake, especially when you're working with microorganisms and all, their names have to be in italics. So make sure biological names and all, it's in italics. Then make sure that there is match between your values in the text and in the table. In the text, you are writing disintegration time was found to be 5 minutes. In the table, it is something 6 point something. So don't have that discrepancy. always make sure that the facts which are there, the numbers and all which are there, they are precise. They are uniformly stated throughout. Then make sure there is no plagiarism. Very important when you're writing a manuscript, you have to write it in your own words. Avoid paraphrasing. That means just, changing active voice to passive voice and all when writing. Check the alignment of the text. Check whether the numbers are consistent with the numbers in the result, whatever you written in the abstract. Results and materials and methods should be matching. Whatever you have explained in materials and methods, this was done. Provide results for the same in the results section. Read the manuscript aloud to yourself. Is everything looking properly? Think of it as a reader. Don't read it as like your paper. Keep an open, unblinded perspective when you're reading the paper. See if the flow is proper. See if the manuscript is addressing the novelty factor. It's addressing the so what question. Why should anyone care about this paper or read the paper? Limitations have to be discussed at the end of the discussion. See that your manuscript is consistent. Your conclusions are being supported by the data. Check the section numbering. Many a times section numbering is also, there are mistakes in it. The section 2, you've then divided it into 2.1, 2.2. So make sure that section numbering is proper. You are ordering all the figures and tables properly. Sometimes there are two figures. Both are called figure 2. There is some confusion happening. Like the third figure came in and you forgot that it is the third figure. You thought it is the second figure. So always check all these small things before you upload or submit your manuscript. Now coming to submission, it is going to be an online process. So sometimes the journals will ask you for an abstract. You write to the editor, send an outline abstract, and if they approve, then you can submit your full-length paper. Cover letter is required, wherein you will state the findings of the paper, the subject of the paper. You will also give a declaration in the cover letter that it is not being considered for publication elsewhere, because you cannot submit simultaneously to 2 journals, 1 paper. Then they may ask you for list of reviewers. Now this list of reviewers also has to be given wisely. List of reviewers, when you are giving, you need to mention that those reviewers are really, experts in your field. You cannot give someone's name just because, you know that person and you think he'll give a positive review for my paper. So you have to always give your reviewers as far as possible, going even for international reviewers. It should not be that, because I am an Indian author, I am only giving people from Mumbai or, from Maharashtra or India. It should be all those people who are experts in the field, global experts, international experts. So look for people who have extensively worked in that field and then give their names, affiliation and all. Graphical abstract, some of the journals may ask for it. So this is how your typical journal portal looks like. You will be asked to first create a login as a corresponding author, and then you will have to upload all your article, different documents, the covering letter, then your abstract, keywords, main manuscript, figure tables, etc. So cover letter, I've already told you that it will be addressed to the editor-in-chief or the editor who's handling that particular journal. Mention the originality of your article in the cover letter in 1 or 2 sentences. Give them an idea about why the paper is important, how it will advance the field, why it deserves to be considered for publication in that journal. So the corresponding author has to sign it. Sometimes they may ask all authors to sign it, but mostly the corresponding author only signs on behalf of all the co-authors. So this is how a list of reviewers is done. The name of the reviewer is important, his designation, his affiliation. The email address is important because then they will contact the person on that email. So it has to be an official email address, the institutional email address of that author. This is how your graphical abstract can be done. So your graphical abstract is nothing but a schematic or a diagrammatic representation. It has to give an overview, a gist of the paper in one look. So whatever aspects have been covered, like in this paper, we were talking about acne. We were talking about acne, nanocarriers for acne. So we have tried to depict the potential scope, how nanocarriers can help in the problem of acne. So we are showing the pilosebaceous unit and the skin here. So depending on what your work is, you will have to go ahead with it. Then coming to actions taken on your manuscript, when you are uploading a paper, either it will be published without any changes, which happens very rarely. It's a great occasion to celebrate if your manuscript is accepted in the first go without any kind of changes. At times they will give you minor changes, publish with minor changes. Then there is publish with major changes, wherein the referee is again going to be sent the revised version, wherein he'll be again giving you comments. In case of published with minor changes, it is not again sent to the reviewer. Sometimes they may ask you to do a lot of changes, so it will be treated like a new submission. So they'll tell you that it cannot be published in the present form. You'll have to resubmit it as a new submission after major modifications. Sometimes they will reject it and invite you to revise it and resubmit, do some additional studies and all. Sometimes it is straight away rejection, which is no doubt disheartening, but you need to look at the comments. They'll give you some comments if it has gone to the reviewer stage. If it has been rejected at the editorial stage, then mostly they say that it does not fit into the scope of our journal, or it is not novel enough, so we didn't send it to the reviewers. But if it goes to the reviewers, then you really get some inputs. They dissect the work and they give you some valuable comments which are useful to you for your future course of action, what you want to do. Now, what do the journals look in as a criteria for decision making? They are going to look at the relevance of the manuscript to the journal scope and readers, whether your article fits in the scope of the journal or whether it is talking about some other aspect totally different from the journal's scope. What kind of a paper it is? Is the message clear? Is it going to be of value to the audiences? The novelty factor, scientific validity. Are your results providing evidence supporting your conclusions? Usefulness of the paper and journal's backlog of accepted manuscripts. That means, is your article like the only one, or there are so many 100 papers in line? So if they're having many papers, obviously then the choice becomes very, very difficult for them. So the rejection rate will increase. They really have to choose because there are so many applications, so many submissions. So quality of presentation, as I told you, presentation of results is very important. Documenting it in manuscript is important. Grammatical evaluation is done of the manuscript. Reasons for rejection could be any of these. The design of experiment is not proper. You have not done proper studies and yet you are concluding big things. You are not adhering to the targeted journal. Your article is a misfit, not as per their specifications. Poor English grammar. Methods are not described in proper detail, materials and methods, over-interpretation of results, statistics is not proper, confusing presentation of results in tables or figures, poor conceptualization. You have not done a proper literature review. As I told you, you have to review what all prior art exists in the field. Author is very audacious, unwilling to revise the manuscript. So then obviously these are all reasons for your rejection. Excessive length, you've written a very long manuscript unnecessarily. So the idea is to convey the maximum using the minimum. Then avoid scientific misconduct, gift authorship, we've already discussed. Redundant publication, you're not supposed to publish the same thing in 2 journals, duplication. Then don't have plagiarism, write in your own words. Fabrication of data, not done anything and you're just fabricating fictitious fake results. Falsification of data, the results you have got are not so promising, but you are painting another picture. Paraphrasing, again, changing active voice to passive voice, changing 1 or 2 words here and there, that is also plagiarism. Now, what to do if a paper gets rejected? All of us go through this. So you're not supposed to get discouraged. You are supposed to read the comments, discuss with your peers, with your mentors, with your collaborators, what best can be done. How can you, address the issues and convert it to a publication? So do not just turn around and submit the same paper to another journal. Work on the lacunae, because then again, they will also reject it. So then where are you reaching? Back to square one. So always remember that you are working on the paper, use it in a constructive manner. Take the criticism, take the rejection in a constructive manner. I know it's disheartening. Okay, 1 or 2 days, you may feel bad about it, but then you have to move on. You have to progress. You have to learn. So make sure that you are not giving up on the paper. Always have that goal that this paper should not lie with me in my folder. It should reach somewhere. When I mean it should reach somewhere, it should reach a good peer-reviewed journal, not a predatory journal. So read the comments, work on it. If it is in your capacity, do additional experiments if you have the resources and all. If you cannot, then obviously you cannot do it. But if it's in your capacity, you have the facility, do the studies and then resubmit. So dealing with referee report, you have to be very, very polite. So when you are getting comments, they have given you this comments. you have to address those comments in a very polite manner. Although you may be irritated that I have mentioned this, why is he saying I have not mentioned? You write properly that the authors have included this already for the kind perusal of the reviewer. So this has to be written in a very polite manner. You're not supposed to be agitated or be very, very aggressive in your response. So you'll have to write a rebuttal letter or a response to reviewers letter wherein you will tell what all changes you have done as suggested by them and highlight those changes in your manuscript so that it's easy for them to track what changes you have done as per their suggestions. So remember, referees are not always stupid. They will always be telling you the right things in your paper. What you have not seen, some lacunae they'll point out and you have to address it accordingly. What to do after a manuscript is accepted? Make sure you share the news with all the collaborators. This is something which sometimes we tend to forget. We've got the paper, we have them, write a mail to them or call them up and inform them that our manuscript is accepted. So it is a great news for them also. They've been a part of the journey with you. So always share it with them, share the good news with them. And make sure once your article is accepted, they will send you a proof to read. That proofreading is important. Sometimes what happens, you are so happy the article is accepted. When the proof comes, you are not really reading it properly. So that proof which they send you, they'll give you a time of say 48 hours to go through that proof. Going through that proof is very important because there may be some distortions. What is a galley proof or a typeset proof? Your article in that final format, journal format, that 2-column format which we see. So in that process, some symbols may get distorted, some units, something is in superscript, subscript, that may have gone haywire. So check all these small details, check that the manuscript is perfectly in order, how you had submitted it, how you want it to appear in the final journal. Once all this is done, the proofreading is done, your article is published, pagination has been done, circulate the reprint which you received to all the co-authors. It's their right. You got your reprint, not bothered about circulating it to co-authors, that is wrong. You have to share the final product with them because even they have contributed to it. Then these are some databases, search engines or databases, which you can refer for your literature review for searching articles. Then how to get full text. This is a major problem with students say that I'm not getting the full text of the article, ma'am. Most of them are subscription. I'm only reading the abstract. So then you have different avenues. You have your ResearchGate. So on ResearchGate, some of the articles are there when the authors have uploaded the copy of that. Or if the author is on ResearchGate, you can write to that author. There is an option that send a full text request and they do reply. So when I am on ResearchGate, what I do is I send a full text request and they will reply. They'll share the full text with me. So ResearchGate is one such platform wherein you can get articles if the author is there on ResearchGate. You can mail the corresponding authors. There is always an email ID given in the article itself below the abstract, corresponding author details. Email the author that I want this access to your paper. Most of them, they will reply to you. They'll send you the full text of the paper happily. So this is one way, or you can send your article to your colleagues abroad, to your friends abroad, because abroad universities have subscription mostly to all these databases, to your Elsevier or even other databases. So you can get your articles easily from them as well. Then your bibliography reference management softwares are available. Mendeley is a free software. Then you have EndNote. Manually to do the referencing becomes very tedious. Then plagiarism, there are softwares to detect plagiarism. So once your manuscript is done, you will have to put it in this software and it will give you the percentage plagiarism. So your plagiarism has to be below 10%. So it has to be as less as possible. It should not be more. So you can check your plagiarism percentage using these softwares. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my research guide, who has been very, very instrumental in whatever I am today, whatever I have done in the field of research or in terms of publications and all, because she is the one who has trained me. She has mentored me for how to, write a paper and all. So whatever I have learned is because of my PhD journey under the able guidance of Professor Vandana Patravale at ICT Mumbai. And from my collaborators, because when I worked in my PhD, it was at TIFR, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai. There, our collaborators were Professor Shobna Sharma and Dr. Sulba Patak. So they have also so much of learning from them about all these things which I'm telling you now, how to present results and all. So small things, but I have learned a lot from them in all these aspects. So I thought I should be sharing today with you. I'm sorry if I've exceeded the time, but I thought that this should be shared because it will be of benefit to someone who is in the process of, writing publications or writing a research paper. Finally, thank you to all for listening to me, for bearing with me, and all the best to all of you for your publishing journey.
Thank you, ma'am. The session is now open for question and answer. If anybody is having any queries, please post your queries in the chat box. So, ma'am, we have first question from Kalindi. She is asking, is there any limit to the number of authors on any scientific publication, regardless of any discipline?
No, usually there have, at least I've never come across any limit on the number of authors. Because if you see, when you're talking about a research paper, there will be much more number of authors. When you're talking about a review paper, obviously review article, there will not be many authors. But in a research paper, the student or the primary author who has done the work, you will have a guide. Many a times you have like a co-guide, or you have collaboration for certain studies with other institutes, and also there are multidisciplinary people involved. So one of the research papers we had published with the TIFR, we were 9 authors in that. It was in biomaterials, 9 authors, because all the authors were involved in some way or the other. There were students from their side, from TIFR, who had helped in the study. There were students from our lab, 2 students, then our guide, then their guide, Professor Shobna Sharma. Then we did some studies at another lab in TIFR. So that Professor Deepak Mathur was also there as an author. So there were 9 authors. So there is no limit as such. If you see in international papers, it is much more. You will see so many authors. It's always double-digit authors and all. So why is that so? Is because the work is interdisciplinary, highly interdisciplinary. You will have immunology, you will have microbiology in it, you will have pharmacology, preclinical data, you will have chemistry in it, analytical people, the different disciplines, people who are contributing to the paper. So then obviously there should be no limit on the number of authors.
Right, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I think there are no questions. Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am. It was very informative and insightful lecture.
There is one question.
Okay.
In chat box. Ma'am, can you enlist some good journals for beginners?
Okay, there is nothing like a good journal and a bad journal. First of all, okay, predatory journals are bad. I agree. But when you are talking about the non-predatory journals which are there, the peer-reviewed journals which are there, it is not that any journal is bad for you or good for you. Like I told you that we are taking a call based on certain things like impact factor. Obviously, everyone wants to have in a high impact factor journal. So as a beginner, don't consider yourself, very low. Like what our ma'am is to always tell us is that you aim for a high impact factor journal. When I say aim for high impact factor, I'm not saying you go directly for Lancet or Nature as a beginner. But then don't be too low. Don't underestimate yourself so much that, you are going in for a very, very low journal. Sometimes, you can do better than that. So ma'am is to always tell us you go for a midway. At least aim for, 2.53 impact factor, if not more. 2.53, you begin with that. If they say no, then you come down slightly. And that is a practice we are still following. When we are thinking about a journal, we keep the stakes slightly high in the beginning. And then if reject and all, we come lower on. First, only if we are setting our standards low, then there will not be progress. Then we will always, remain where we are. So somewhere, you have to be told, take a risk and try, make an attempt. And as I told you, again, the decision is based on whether it's a sole publication for you. If it's a sole publication, things are dependent on it, then obviously your focus is, to go for a journal wherein chances are more, the rejection rate is low and all. You feel that this will get done. But then if you can wait, then why not try for a slightly high impact factor journal? If it works, then well. If it doesn't, no problem. Don't get disheartened. Go for a next slightly lower journal, but you will learn. They may give you some inputs. So everything is a part of learning, and never underestimate yourself. As I told you, there is a misconception. As a beginner means I am, all the hurdles are for me only. It's not like that. Even experienced authors, I have seen when we were writing in ICT also under Professor Patravali's guidance, our papers have been rejected. So we were like, how is it getting rejected? Madam has said it is okay and all, because for us, we were in the process of learning, but now we know that how it is done. There's so much of competition. So you don't have to take it as a negative thing. How could they reject a paper? The scientist is renowned, Professor Patravali is known, or ICT is known, but it is not like that. And it is not for beginners or for this. The hurdles are same for everyone. The reviewers are looking at those same parameters when they are reviewing your manuscript. So don't have that mentality that I am a beginner. So, I will be having a tough time publishing my journal. I will go for as lowest as possible. Don't have that mentality. Slightly go in for a decent impact factor to begin with, so that you will be learning, and who knows, your article may get published also. You never know. Sometimes we only define limits for ourselves, and then we are surprised when our article is appreciated, it is accepted. We were apprehensive, but now it is done. And this has happened with me also. One of my students' papers at NMIMS, we were not expecting that it will go in that journal, but it went in that journal and in the first go. And I was so happy that was the first paper, the first journal which we had thought about, it took that. Otherwise, always it is, ek se reject hua, dusre mein, dusre se teesre mein. But this was in the first go, first journal which we had thought about. We had thought about IJP, it went in IJP, and straight away they accepted it with minor changes. So that happens. But you have to try for it. You have to be positive. Always be hopeful. So I hope I've answered that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is a good journal and bad journal.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello,
Another
ma'am.
question? Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Actually,
Good afternoon.
you have described the contents at a very micro level. But ma'am, one of my question is that can we include our self-interpreted data in the results and discussion apart from the author's idea?
I didn't get your question. Means it's your paper. You will have your own data in the results.
Yeah. But we can we describe the self-interpreted data in other way?
Self-interpreted data you're saying, or self?
Yeah. Yes. Means related to any mechanism. Suppose if we are going to describe that, most of the times we written that it is suggested that suppose if I am working on the myself, so actually I am writing
Yes.
on one of my manuscript. Actually, I am just going to submit it now International Journal of Biological Micromolecule. And actually, in
Okay.
which I have mentioned the one of the mechanism is that there is a hydrophilic and hydrophobic interaction between the chitosan copolymer and the pluronics. So it may going to form the core of the hydrophobic by pluronic and shell by the chitosan.
Okay. Yeah, if that,
Hello?
if you are saying that you want to interpret on your own,
Yeah.
you think
Yes, yes,
that is
yes,
obviously welcome, but then you will have to give some kind of a justification for it.
Yes.
Why do you
Okay.
think, this could be a probable mechanism? Because,
Okay.
you've seen it before, you have done
Yes, yes.
experiments similarly in the past, and same kind of finding you had got. So that is, telling you that probably this could be the mechanism. So you need to have a proper justification. You can always
And-
give, it is not that always you have to refer to prior art. You can give
Yes.
your own interpretation too.
And ma'am, whatever the mechanism that I have finalized, actually it is not reported to earlier one. So therefore, actually I have tried to interpret that mechanism, and according to that, I have ordered in the manuscript also.
Yeah. So you can always write it like a hypothesis that, this is what you
Okay.
are thinking, that this is,
Okay.
what do you say, plausible or probable mechanism.
Mhm.
You can put it that way. If you are not, confident about it, because like you said previously, you have not found it, and
Mhm.
like in a nascent stage, you can always write that it is looking like a probable mechanism.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
Ma'am, another question from Trupti. She's asking how to identify fake journals.
Yeah, so you can just look up their website and all, and most of the times, if you look at the journal, you will come to know their past issues and all would be there. We always go through the past archives, the past issues of the journal and all. So you can see what kind of articles have been published. So it's very easy to catch fake journals. Most of the times we get so many invites in our mailbox, and when we are discussing it with our colleagues, they say, even I have got that same invite. So they have sent it to everyone that you pay so and so fees and we will publish your article. So moment you get such invites, know that you pay so much fees and we will publish your article. It's most of the time it is predatory, because the journal is really authentic and all. They will not have to ask like that.
Right.
People on their own, lined up to submit articles, and they will never ask from you that you pay me and I will publish. The very fact that they are mailing so many people in bulk, they are sending such spam mails to everyone that you provide us money and we will publish, and that too they say within 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So that itself is something fishy, because it never happens that way. So that is an indication to you that you are not supposed to fall prey to this. It looks very attractive, and as a beginner especially, you feel that someone has invited me, because you are in such a tough time. You are searching for an avenue, a journal to publish, and somebody is inviting you. You feel tempted that may as well submit it here and I'll get a paper in my name. But then please don't entertain such mails or entertain such fake journals. Like I told you, it has a negative impact. Better be zero rather than get a predatory publication.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, another question, how to select reviewers?
Yeah, as I told you, you know your work. Like I have worked in, say, polymeric nanoparticles for cancer. So who's working on anti-cancer formulations? Who's working on polymeric nanoparticles? So then it has to be a fit. The person has to be expert in that domain, expert in that area. So you have done a literature search. So which are the research groups working extensively in this area? And like I said, preferably look for international ones. You can have 1 out of 5 reviewers from your country, but all Indians, it looks as if, you are having a bias. If there are Indians, chances mere zyada badhenge, foreigners pata nahi mere paper ko reject karenge. So that should not be your this. You should always have unbiased, like a global view. You can have one from Europe, one from US, have people from different countries, because they are looking for experts in that area. It's not geographically bound. Your reviewers can be from anywhere, because ultimately it's a soft copy or email based review. So you can have reviewers spread across continents from Australia, Europe, US, and one or two can be from India. But don't keep all from India. It doesn't look good. It creates the impression that you are restricting yourself, probably because you have some bias. You feel Indian authors will know my institute, will at least have some consideration for my manuscript.
Okay, ma'am.
Viewers.
Yes, another question from Anup. He's asking if we can add in the research paper beyond what you enlisted, means like a review article.
No, ideally in a research paper, your introduction should be very concise. Like I mentioned that you introduce prior art in the field, give a brief literature review of what has been done in the field so far, but it should never be like a mini review. It should never be like a mini review, because that is not the intent. Then you are, diverting from the focus. The focus of a research paper is to discuss that piece of research, that particular work which you have done. In that, if you are wasting too much of space and time on, discussing prior art in so much detail, then for that purposes, review articles are there. For discussing extensively the literature or the current status of any field, review articles are there for that. You don't have to, spend time in the introduction of a research paper. Research paper introduction is just supposed to set the stage in a concise manner for the work which follows below in the paper. That particular piece of work.
Right, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
So I think there are no more questions. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session. And it was very relevant topic to cover, as we all are going through the journey of publishing papers, and
Yes.
we all are facing some of the hindrances, and I'm sure most of their doubts have been cleared today. So now, as a part of our practice to honor and felicitate the speaker with an appreciation certificate, now I request our principal sir to present the certificate of appreciation and speak few words on this occasion.
So I take this, am I audible?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
I take this privilege to extend my deepest sense of gratitude to Dr. Priyanka Prabhu for delivering such a wonderful talk. I'm so impressed with your talk, and I'm damn sure that it's very useful for all the researchers and those who are struggling to publish their articles in a good journal. I know you since last 5-6 years. You are such a hardcore teacher and thorough researcher. So hats off to you, Priyanka. Thank you for sparing your valuable time on a holiday. Thank you very much. God bless you and all the best.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And like you said, on a holiday, I'm thankful to the audience that participated in large numbers and they were really interested in, taking something useful from this session. And I hope the session was useful, although I extended the time. Sorry for that. This information I thought I should be sharing with everyone because somewhere it will help you, because it has definitely helped in my journey. At least all these small points I still take care of making a checklist and all. It takes time, but it ultimately it polishes the product. It makes you write a better publication. So it's always welcome. So all the best to all of you, and thank you, Pete sir, once again for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam.
Thank
It's a
you,
really
ma'am.
wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I request Mr. Parimal Hadge, faculty at Datta Mehki College of Pharmacy, to present vote of thanks.
Audible, ma'am?
Yes,
Yes, Doctor.
please
you are
continue,
audible.
sir.
So, good afternoon, all of you. On behalf of Datta Mehki College of Pharmacy and Datta Mehki Institute of Medical Sciences, and my entire teaching and technical staff, so we can call it a fraternity of research interest here together. And my own behalf, I, Parimal Hadge, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Priyanka Prabhu ma'am for gracing your important work and sharing with us your finding opinions today. It was very pertinent topic to cover. It's not an easy thing to write out a research paper, but ma'am, the way you have explained all the things, starting from the selection of journal towards the conclusion and conflict of interest, now it's looking easy for us and my students also. So thank you so much, ma'am, for your time and views on the same subject. Also, I would like to express my gratitude towards our respected registered sir, Dr. Babaji Ghode sir, for the inspiration he has provided for the persistent improvement in us. So thank you, sir. I also thank Dr. Anil Pete sir, who is always enthusiastic for organizing such great lectures every week, where faculty and students get a guidance and the motivation from the experienced personalities like ma'am is here. So this initiative will definitely help us to go ahead in a research publication. So thank you so much for it, sir. It's an honor to host all of the audience in this day's lecture. I'm very grateful to all of the participants for joining with us and for your sincere attention. So thank you all of you and have a great day.
Thank you, Parimal sir. So it was pleasant to host all the